Being a charismatic person really boils down to just three things. In this video, we will reverse engineer what makes some people charismatic and other people totally forgettable. And it's probably not what you think. First, I want you to picture somebody in your life who is very charismatic, very magnetic, and everybody likes. I want you to think about that person. Got them in your head? Okay, good. Now I want you to write down a bunch of qualities of that person. Some adjectives, some things that that person brings to mind. Take a couple minutes and do that. Pause the video if you have to, and come back when you're ready. We're going to be using what you wrote later on in the video to tie it all together. Here is how I would encourage you to think about charisma. I want you to think of it in terms of three qualities. The first one is self-confidence. I would define self-confidence as belief in one's ability to lead. Now, this doesn't mean that you always have to take the lead, but you should believe in your ability to do so when life calls on you to do so. So for example, at work, do you feel like at a moment's notice, if you had to, you could step in and take a leadership role? What about when you're in a conversation with somebody? Do you feel like you could lead a conversation naturally? Can you show up at your church or your family or in your friend group and be a natural leader in those situations? Now notice I said self-confidence is not your ability to lead. It is your belief in your ability to lead. And that's a huge difference. If you don't believe in your ability to step in when it counts, you will have low self-confidence. The second component of charisma is self-awareness. And this could be defined simply as the degree to which your self-image aligns with reality. Now, most people have an inaccurate self-image. They either have an inflated self-image, like if you're a narcissist, or they have a deflated self-image, like if you are somebody who suffers from depression, for example. If you're a normal human being, this can fluctuate back and forth between inflated self-image and deflated self-image. In both cases, you have a low self-awareness. When you're high in self-awareness, you are almost observing yourself in the third person. You're sort of detached. You're neither too hard on yourself nor too easy. Here's how I want you to imagine these two things, self-confidence and self-awareness, relating. I want you to imagine a graph. Look at this graph. A two-dimensional graph with self-confidence on the x-axis and self-awareness on the y-axis. And individual people, including yourself, exist somewhere in this two-dimensional graph. Now let's walk through the different quadrants in this graph. So let's start with somebody who is low in self-confidence and low in self-awareness. This is somebody who has a negative or even self-destructive self-view. This is a bad place to be. We don't want to be here. Now let's move over to the lower right quadrant, and this is somebody who is low in self-awareness but high in self-confidence. So this would be somebody who would be perceived as the clown, or somebody who's maybe a little bit obnoxious, somebody who can't quite read the room, and we all know somebody like that one uncle at the family reunion, not naming any names. Next, we have somebody who is low in self-confidence, but high in self-awareness. So this is somebody who might be perceived as sort of shy. They might have a big heart. They might be an empath, but they don't quite have the backbone of somebody who is confident. Finally, we have people who are high in self-confidence and high in self-awareness. This is the holy grail. This is the pirate's gold. This is what you want to shoot for. This is where you will discover charisma. When you are somebody who is high in self-confidence and high in self-awareness, something that is pretty rare, by the way, weird things start to happen. You start to be okay with expressing your insecurities or your flaws. You start to actually lean into things that make you interesting or odd. You start to naturally have a sense of humor. You crack jokes spontaneously. You are more free-flowing. And these are all symptoms of somebody who is just naturally high in confidence and self-awareness. And this is typically what we call charisma. When you are high in self-awareness and self-confidence, here's another thing that happens. You just naturally become a much more unique person. And in two ways. The first way is that you will just naturally stand out because not a whole lot of people in the world are self-confident and self-aware. But also, when you have these two qualities, you will feel much more comfortable leading in interactions with people, with things that make you odd or weird or interesting. things that make you stand out. And when you lean into things that make you weird or odd, here's a beautiful, magical thing that happens. Other people will start to do the same thing. So they will reciprocate your weirdness with their weirdness. The authentic parts of you and the other person start to interact. And this is where truly rich and interesting conversations come from. Now, I promised a third quality of charisma. And before I give that, I want you to think back to a conversation you've recently had with somebody that was really good. Family member, friend, stranger, anybody. A conversation where you felt like the other person just got you, where you felt naturally drawn to the other person. I imagine that the person you were talking to probably exhibited sincere curiosity in what you had to say. You can really only be curious in other people if you have a relatively high level of self-confidence and self-awareness. When you are not confident or self-aware, your attention will naturally focus inward. And when your attention naturally focuses inward, you just don't have the bandwidth to be curious about other people. So the big takeaway from this is that work on being more self-confident, work on being more self-aware, and the curiosity part, which is a natural part of charisma, will sort of take care of itself. Now let's tie this back to the charismatic person that you imagined at the beginning of this video. I imagine that this person is very confident, relatively confident, very self-aware, and they are probably genuinely curious about other people. The good news is that if you want to be more charismatic, you can just adopt those same qualities. Work on being more curious and more confident and more self-aware, and watch how people are naturally drawn to you. Thank you for watching. Oh, by the way, if you're still watching, subscribe, and also put a note in the comments about how you would define charisma. And I'll see you in the next video.